And unlike our other sessions, which have been multiple presenters, 2, 3, even 5 people, we have one presenter today, which is unusual, but I am confident that the content will warrant it. The presenter for this last afternoon is Mr. Hiroo Kurano, who is talking about the special relevance of Sukiya, like the building we're in, Sukiya-style architecture for North American Japanese gardens. This is part 2 of a talk that was given at our 2014 conference in Chicago, and then was so good that as the journal editor at the time, I asked Mr. Kurano to publish it, and it was published in journal number 3, 2016. Hiroo Kurano is an architect and president of Kurano Associates. He was an undergraduate and got a master's as well as bachelor's degrees in Japan at Yokohama National University. Then his master's in architecture and urban design from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. Then went to work in Japan for Nihon Sekkei Company, and also in America for the very well-known Sasaki Dawson Demei Associates and Hideo Sasaki as well. And then 30 years his own firm. If today's presentation is anything like the one in Chicago 7 years ago, our eyes are going to be open to the broad span of Japanese Sukiya taste and its Christian roots. So, with no further ado, please welcome Kurano-san.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ken Brown, for my introduction. He is also the moderator for the part 1 presentation, and also helped me for my article in NAJGA magazine for that presentation. As well as Keiji Iga. This presentation is the continuation of the part 1, which was presented at NAJGA biannual conference in Chicago, October 2014, and its summary was published in the 2016 journal, and my wife has some broken up copy of the article. If you have, if you are interested in after the presentation, go to see her. And this is the summary of today's presentation. It's in your handout, and it is a lot of information I have to cover today. Today's my presentation is Katsura Imperial Palace, number 2, Katsura Imperial Palace. But in order to understand part 2, it is important to understand part 1. Yeah. Oh, yeah, thank you. So I'm sorry, I'm go over part 1 as quickly as possible. And number 2 is in your handout also that this is a summary of future presentation, which I have, if I have a chance to present to you. Objective of the part one presentation. This presentation focuses on the complex across cultural origin of Sukiya architecture, as well as how and why it manifests a harmonious unity between architecture, garden, and nature. First discussion is about the Sukiya tradition in its origin context, the tea ceremony of Senno-rikyu. Then next discussion is about the analysis of the influence of European culture on wabi-style tea ceremony. Before I talk about my presentation, this is today's contemporary architecture, Japanese architecture today. As we know, the Pritzker Prize, which is also referred to as a Nobel Prize of the Architecture World, has been awarded to 8 Japanese architects. And first one is Kenzo Tange. This is Tokyo Olympic 1964 facility done by Kenzo Tange. Since Japan opened the door to Western architecture after the Meiji Restoration in 1868, Matthew Perry Commodore of the U.S. Navy played a leading role of the opening of Japan to the West in 1854. Japanese modern architecture has been greatly influenced by the West and continue to be a strong influence to the world today. However, even with the strong influence of Western architecture, there has always been a strong stream of traditional Japanese architecture called Sukiya style architecture, which has survived through modernization. This is a sample of the Sukiya style today. Two important Westerners played a leading role in the opening of Japan to the West and their indirect influence to the two major Japanese architecture streams. Western style architecture, Matthew Perry Commodore of the U.S. Navy, 1854, and Sukiya style architecture, Francis Xavier, first Portuguese missionary to Japan, 1549. Summary of part one, the challenge of understanding Sukiya. Sukiya is literally means originally tea house or tea ceremony. So it is objective to understand the original concept of Sukiya style architecture through Senno-rikyu's tea ceremony, wabicha, and tea house, that indoor and outdoor space, and directly from tea ceremony. The tea ceremony. This is a quote from Futagawa and Ito, the well-known Japanese architecture historians. Oddly enough, in spite of its continuous popularity among the Japanese, the Sukiya style has never played a leading role in Japanese architecture history. In recent it certainly has not stood in the forefront of modern Japanese architecture. The millions of Japanese, the ancient and the traditional Sukiya evokes association with landscape and buildings which elicit fondness for natural material, simplicity, and closeness to nature, dominating every detail of the composition. The philosophic and aesthetic concept that brought the Sukiya style into existence stimulate its development and ensured its continuation over 4th century is a concept inherent believed by Japanese and may be difficult to explain to a Westerner. The word wabi, which embodies this concept, does not lend itself readily to translation, for it can mean a number of things: loneliness, rustic simplicity, quiet taste, a gentle affection for antique and ostentatious, and rather melancholy refinement. So what can we do today to understand the true meaning of the Sukiya design concept, mysterious to many Westerners and even Japanese, and apply the concept to today's Sukiya style architecture design? I have two important questions. What are the significant changes in Riku's tea ceremony? Number two, what are the major causes for Riku to make the significant change in his tea ceremony? We should look at Riku's kokoro, inner spiritual heart. Kokoro, Japanese art, Sado tea ceremony, Kendo or Kado flower arrangement, martial art, Kendo, Judo. These names has a do are based on kokoro, inner spiritual heart. It has been commonly said Japanese are kokoro no tami. Kokoro no tami means people of heart. The key is to understand the transformation in Riku's inner spiritual heart, kokoro, that caused significant changes in traditional tea ceremony. Taian, built by Riku, Taian tea house itself is significant changes in the traditional tea house. Senno Riku's biography in 1522, Senno Riku was born in Sakai. He is was forced to commit suicide in 1591, and he is the originator of wabicha and Sukiya style architecture. Tea ceremony was introduced from China in the year 600 to 900 and practiced by Zen monks. At that time, the tea ceremony was popular among the samurai nobles and the rich merchant, and thus the tea room were very extravagant, ornate and expensive. Rikyu's wabicha made significant changes in traditional tea ceremony. This is that time traditional tea room. This is the example of the ornate, extravagant art in the tea room imported from China. This is the Hideyoshi's golden tea room. And the Rikyu Taian, designed and built by Rikyu as the part of the expansion of Myokian in 1582, national treasure of Japan. This is the origin of the Sukiya style. And significant change number one by Rikyu. Rikyu created a more simple, serene, humble, functionally efficient space and harmony to the surrounding nature by number one, orienting the tea house towards south. Number two, minimize the size of the interior space, 2-3 tatami mats. Because of the orientation change, the tea ceremony associated closer to nature and had a greater appreciation for the change of sunlight and the 4 seasons. This is Taiwan, outside, west side and east side, and drawing floor plan tea room, 6 by 6 feet. This is Nijiriguchi. Changes by Rikyu. Rikyu created Nijiriguchi. I'm going to skip this one. Number 3, significant changes by Rikyu. Rikyu built a tea house like a farmer's barn, using the local available technology and natural material, wood and clay, mud. Rikyu built the tea house to make a harmony to nature and express humility. Emancipation from the status symbol architecture, tea ceremony as retreat. That's emancipation of status symbol architecture. Taiwan as a retreat. And Rikyu created Loji. I'm going to skip that explanation. Loji. Other significant changes in Rikyu's tea ceremony will be explained later if we have time. Then I have two important questions. Number one is already saw some of the changes, but number two, the major cause for Rikyu to make a significant changes in his tea ceremony. The major cause for the significant changes in traditional tea ceremony might be influenced by cross-cultural influence from Europe to Japan in 1500s. So it is objected to explore and seek the inner spiritual heart of Rikyu, who created the new world of Wabicha by understanding the impact of the cross-cultural influence. We have to understand Rikyu's maturation in a complex age. Historical background before Rikyu's death. This is in your handout. This is a summary of before Rikyu's death. In 1549, Francis Xavier came to Japan as the first Catholic missionary and began his missionary work that would continue through the work of several generations of Jewish priests and lay brothers, most active in Japan in 1570 to 1580. Oda Nobunaga forced to commit suicide by Akechi Mitsuhide, and Toyotomi Hideyoshi came to power in 1582, and persecution for Christians started, and Rikyu built the Wabi-style tea house called Taian in that same year. Historical background, number two, after Rikyu's death, this is in your handout. Edo period began, and 1633 anti-Christian edict by Edo government, and the Taian house, tea house Juan, built by Oda Uraku, brother of Oda Nobunaga, and 1625. Katsura village main building was completed. Historical background in Europe at this time. This is very important because several missionaries came from Europe. So that time, printing machine was invented, and the most important thing is the construction of Saint Basilica, Vatican City, Rome. Pope Leo X for indulgence sale for Saint Peter Basilica. Martin Luther against the indulgence sale, and Protestant Christian Reformation by Martin Luther. Then the Society of Jesus, Reformation of Roman Catholic. Francis Xavier is one of the seven founders. This is Saint Basilica, St. Peter Basilica. This is very gigantic. Contrast to Taiwan by minimizing that space. Rikyu created the space which is part of the surrounding nature and universe. Height Rikyu's Wabisha and Christian faith. This is the list is in the handout also. This 7 disciples, they call Nanatets, they're listed, and 2 special disciples listed in the handout. But important thing, according to the record, 5 of Rikyu's Nanatets, 7 disciples, and Oda Uraku, brother of Oda Nomura Naga, was Christian. And this is the famous Takayama Ukon, one of his 7 disciples, Christian daimyo at the time, Lord of Takatsuki Castle, exiled to Manila, Philippines, because of his Christian faith. Statue is located Takatsuki City, Osaka. And this is also in your handout. This is the famous missionaries at that time came to Japan. Quote from the book of Toshio Takahashi, Urasenki instructor, pastor at Kasugabe Church in Japan. That spirit of the tea ceremony, Chanayu, which has been known as the essence of Japanese culture, has been experienced through the point of Zen Buddhism religion only, but the influence from Christianity was totally eliminated. We can see now this was done intentionally by strong political power at that time. During Hideyoshi's persecution for Christianity and prohibition of Christianity until Edo period, the record material or genealogy for Christianity were almost totally destroyed or hidden. Quote continue. However, recently this fact has come to the surface by discovery of the letter, record, and painting at the Vatican Palace in Rome and the research in Japan. The development of Rikyu's Wabicha was greatly influenced by Christianity. There are similarities between the Catholic Mass and the tea ceremony. Some of the tea houses in those days were placed for the hidden Catholic worship. For example, Juan. Quote continue, the heart of Wabicha can be understood easier if we understood its relevance to Christian faith. The heart of Wabicha is based on the God's mercy and compassion. His example of a quote from Bible, be merciful just as your Father God is merciful. And For even the Son came to be served unto, but to serve and to give his life ransom for many. Quote continue. We have not yet found providing recorded document that Rikyu was a Christian. This absence presumably stems from the historical presentation of Christian and the ongoing political need to distance Japan's military leaders and one of its culture form, tea ceremony, from outside culture. However, based on historical facts, we can infer that Rikyu's wabicha was greatly influenced by the Christian faith he shared with the most of his disciples. I'll skip that one. And other significant changes for Rikyu's wabicha. Low, I can skip that one. The window, Shitajimado. This is the interesting quote from Masao Kinoshita, who was my former boss. The purpose of the window is essential to take sunlight and air for ventilation. That additional function is without seeing even a glimpse of a tree and feel the dynamic force of nature and the universe. So I like skip it. And Yane Tenjo. I'd like to talk about the Yane. Taiwan's Yane is section of roof symmetrical, not symmetrical. Different eave heights between the east and the west to keep harmony with surrounding exterior nature. This is the east side, and skiers, as you know, the skiers roof, modern skier architecture, always relation to the garden is important. This is modern skier architecture. And to contrast from Ise Grand Shrine, this is the symbol and origin of Japanese architecture. The year of first built is unknown. 2,000 years ago, we talk about the site later. Tenjo, skip the Tenjo. Conclusion. Tracing the Christian context of wabi style tea and spaces does not mean that Rikyu copied Catholic practice. In contrast to the grand cathedral built by Christian missionary in imitation of mighty St. Peter Basilica, Rikyu's tea room are diminutive. The Taiwan is 8.5 feet high and 6.5 feet across. Moreover, whereas cathedral reflect the glory believed to exist in heaven, tea architecture embraced the purity attribute to the nature and humility. Many factors may explain the profound rustic simplicity of the Sukiya style, but most basically maybe Rikyu's desire to express humility he found in Christianity. Now we're going to go to the main presentation, Katsura. Before that, I'd like to quickly go to the Juan. Juan National Treasure Tea House was built 1618 in Kyoto by Oraku, brother of Oda Nobunaga, Rikyu's special disciple, and moved to Inuyama City, Aichi Prefecture, in 1972. It is said it was built for the place for the hidden Catholic worship. This is Juan in Inuyama City today, and we can take a look at the mysterious triangle. This drawing was drawn by Takeshi Baba, Nihon Seiko, who involved the demolition to relocate building to Inuyama City in 1972. And this drawing shows mysterious triangles. It was said a statue of Mary was found during demolition. Then today's main presentation, we'll go to Katsura Rikyu. Katsura Rikyu was built, main building 1624 and continued to add until 1663. Location Kyoto, designer unknown. Main house built by Prince Hachijo Toshito and his son Hachijo Toshitada. 7 Christian Doro, hidden Christian stone Latin, Olive style are there. The location is west side of the Kyoto and located close to the Katsura River and Katsura village and Katsura River's relation. And I like to present 7 points of the presentation. Number 1, Sukiya concept in the planning in Katsura. Number 2, Senno Rikyu's Sukiya's concept in architecture and landscape architecture in Katsura. Number 3, origin of introduction of Iki style to the Sukiya design in Katsura. And number 4, who is the designer of Katsura? Number 5, 7 Christian Latin and Christian faith in Katsura. Number 6, Bruno Taut and Katsura. Number 7, conclusion. I'd like to introduce this nice, beautiful book published by Kodansha. Photograph taken by Takeshi Nishikawa. He spent 5 years in taking photographs at Katsura Rikyu. Most of the photograph of this presentation are from his book. And the text was written Akira Naito, Emeritus Professor of Nagoya Institute of Technology, Architecture, History. Quote from Akira Naito, Mr. Nishikawa and I have attempted to show the inner spirit that led to the aesthetic philosophy of Katsura rather than outer appearance of the building and the garden alone. Perhaps this is the tantamount to saying that we have endeavored to show. It is about Katsura that will not out eyes think. I like to go through that very quick photograph tour from the gate and Imperial Pathway and inside the central gate and many buildings surrounding pond. Very quick. Number one, Sukiya concept in the site planning in Katsura. Harmonious design with the architecture, the garden, and the existing surrounding nature. Locating the buildings in site plan was planned to respect and take advantage of the existing natural site condition. This creates a fair harmony to the surrounding garden, pond, and nature. This also creates a diagonal natural pathway instead of the traditional rigid right angle pathway. I'd like to present two traditional site plan. Number one, Kyoto Imperial Palace. Number two, Ise Grand Shrine. This Kyoto Imperial Palace example is the right angle location of the building, create right angle of the pathway. This is a sample of those days traditional architecture. And this is the model of that one. And this is compared to Katsura Rikyu. And this is a grand shrine, origin and symbol of architecture, Japanese architecture. I explained before. Two alternate sites for Ise Grand Shrine. Every 20 years, alternate renewal This is the origin of Japanese architecture. The year of the first built unknown, probably 2,000 years ago. And Katsura Rikyu. And number 2, Sukiya concept in architecture, design, and landscape architecture in design in Katsura. Katsura Rikyu is built as the villa of emperor for princely retreat with nobility, elegance, simplicity, and exquisite beauty as an imperial palace. But we can see the strong Sukiya style feature of Rikyu's tea house as well as the lodge. We'll take a look at lodge. Lodge is between the outer arbor and Shokinte tea room. This area is between that area is lodge. Outer arbor, stone walk in front of outer arbor. And the Shokinte tea room, tea house, and the Nijiruguchi, the tea room, and such the roof at Katsura. Most of the Katsura villa are the thatched roof or the wood single roof. Similar like a farmer's house to the concept of Rikyu's Sukiya style, but except the roof of onrindo. This is the roof of Shokinte, Shoiken. This reminds me Shirakara village, such the roof of farmer house. Let's look at the onrindo roof. This is the onrindo. This is the only roof tile structure in Katsura. This is onrindo. Onrindo stands out as it has a different atmosphere than the whole palace. It is because the building was used to contain memorial tablets. The roof of onrindo is a traditional roof, the traditional roof tile, because of the building character. However, it is said that curved roof line is designed to be curved to keep harmony to the surrounding scenery instead of using the traditional roof tile design. This is the onrindo roof. And at the same time, the Nikko Toshogu was built as a mausoleum for the Shogun Tokunaga Ieyasu. Very interesting. At the same time, there's a Tokunaga and other roof. This is interesting. Shokinte roof is as symmetrical. This is the open style tea house. And we should look at the Gepparo roof inside asymmetric column of support. gonna skip this. Origin of introduction of Iki style to the Sukiya architecture design in Katsura. Iki. This is also a quote from Masao Kinoshita, my boss. Iki, fashionable and sharp, smart, nifty style shows a great deal of consideration for Iki type. Sukiya is regarded as belonging to the Edo period. It is much more reasonable to think that Iki preceded the Edo, and that its origin should be sought through a mysterious dynamic force interwoven with something inherent to the ideal of simplicity. This is from his book, Expression of Iki with the Line in Space, Modern Sukiya style architecture. Also, this is from his book, Iki, the example of Iki embodied in the natural object, glass. Iki shoji, changing the rhythm of the traditional grid. This is the modern architecture, Miyako Hotel, Kyoto. This is the garden of the modern architecture. Iki at Katsura. This is interior, Shokinte. This is the interior Shoiken. This is a stepping stone in front of Onrindo. This is the rain gutter of Shoin. Iki found in Katsura is development of ornamental space, ornamental aspect for the expression of the heart to entertain the guests. Omotenashi no kokoro in Rikyu's Wabicha. Number 4, who is the architect and the landscape architect of Katsura? Rikyu. It may be said that Enshu Kobori is the designer, but no record found for his evidence that he is a designer of Katsura. However, it is no doubt Prince Hachijo Toshihito and his son Hachijo Toshitada influenced the design of Katsura greatly as owner. We can say that they are the designer. In 7 Christian stone Latin and Christian face in Katsura Rikyu. In Katsura, 7 of total 24 stone Latin are Olive style Latin, Christian Latin, which are found about 25 in all Japan. This is the 7 location of the Christian Latin. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7. And this is the explanation of the Christian Latin from brochure you can purchase in Katsura. It said Christian Latin of Catholicism, and engraved on the Latin Fili, is Latin, means Son of God, Jesus Christ. But this is more makes sense. 90 degrees of that picture rotation LHQ, QHL, and Q is Hebrew is leading from right hand to left hand, and we have to add bow. So QAHL, that means to assemble for religious reason. The word commonly used to translate the HWHY, LHQ, the assembly of Yahweh, the assembly of God, quote from the Old Testament Hebrew lexion, the community of Matthew and Qumran. And the 5 minutes, the reason of 7 Christian stone Latin is cultural liquor. This is designer Hachijo Toshito and Hachijo Toshito married Christian ladies in this record. And it is also the Oribe Hongo was a right hand of Prince Hachijo Toshito was executed because of his Christianity faith in 1634, and the Christian stone Latin was installed 7 years after execution. The court from Takashi, Toshio Takashi, I'm going to skip that one. And finally, Bruno Taut and Katsura Rikyu. Bruno Taut was a renowned German architect, urban planner, and author. He was active during the Weimar period and is known for theoretical works as well as his building design. Quote from Akira Naito, during the Meiji period, very few people of Japan and the world were familiar with the Katsura Palace. Then, in May 1933, German architect Bruno Taut took refuge in Japan from the Nazi, describing himself a bang-about artist. He spent the next 3 years familiarizing himself with Japan, visiting Japanese architecture, including Katsura Palace, Ise, Shirakawa Village, and Nikoto Shogu. The quote continued. He then published several critiques and earnestly advised to the Japanese intellectual of that time, the Japanese people who since the Meiji period had concerned themselves all too single-minded with the adoption of Western ways, should rediscover their own traditional art. Bruno Taut argued that the Katsura Palace, which represents the imperial tradition, was architecture of eternal and universal value, like a Parthenon. Obviously, it would be a mistake from his historical standpoint to take Bruno Taut theory concerning to Katsura Palace too seriously. But it is nevertheless true that owing to the effort, the Katsura Palace come to be known throughout the world as an outstanding example of traditional Japanese architecture. This is according to the quote from Bruno Taut, his own critic. When he viewed the garden from the moon viewing bamboo deck at Old Showing, he was touched by his heart and moved to tears by beauty of the scenery, which is incalculable value, the beauty of the great. The beauty of art is merely the beauty of form. We have to understand the spiritual relationship behind the mystery of the beauty of art. This is a translation to Japanese from Germany, Hideo Fujita. Conclusion of Katsura Rikyu. Bruno Taut was touched by his heart and moved to tears by the beauty of the scenery. And he said, we have to understand the spiritual relationship behind the mystery of the beauty of art. Bruno Taut's words remind us the spiritual relationship that Rikyu had in his kokoro, inner spiritual heart, when he created Sukiya style tea house. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kurano-san, for I guess just giving us a sea of wonderful images and history and interesting ideas, and for doing it in 59 minutes. I didn't have to pull out the hook. I know it's getting towards the end of a long day, but there was a lot of food for thought there. So any questions you have? Please don't be shy. Raise your hands. I will repeat them for the Zoom audience. Any questions? I have a question to get us started. A few years ago, one of my Korean graduate students wrote a paper about the Taian tea house, to go back to part one, and that recent Japanese scholarship has tried to indicate some similarities to Korean, so-called hanok, Korean-style house. The small windows, it's very cold in Korea. Many of Rikyu's disciples, or several of them actually, were with the Japanese army in Korea, and then came back and brought tea bowls from Korea back and potters. And one theory is that some Japanese architectural historian that some of the ideas in wabi-style architecture, like the Taian, are Korean. Even the use of pine, soft pine, which was not common in Japanese architecture. So I know that's not your main point, but any... And of course, you are not arguing some direct relation to Christianity, but a kind of interpretation and a kind of Christianity maybe opening up Rikyu's mind to see new things. Yeah. Any ideas about that theory on the Taian?
I think I didn't know that Korean influence, but this is a great idea that the Taiwan is theory is very international, getting more international. I think that's a great story. Thank you very much.
I guess maybe I don't know if this is on, but yes, helping us kind of rethink some of these iconic structures that we've been kind of trained to think about in one way. And I think your bigger point in part one is that so little information about Rikyu. He's a hugely famous figure, but why are there almost no documents?
That's right.
Nampo Roku, this sort of supposedly Sains, is discovered in 1686, 100 years later.
I mentioned that persecution of Christianity is very strong. Right. That major issue in that time, and most of the Japanese don't remember that many Christians were persecuted. Hundreds of Christians persecuted at that time. Right.
The Jesuits had a Christian painting school in Nagasaki in the 1580s that we just don't think about. So there are kind of, I guess you're arguing a kind of revisionism happened with the Tokugawa when Christianity is persecuted and ended, which kind of continued into the modern era. Okay, any other, I got it started with a very specific question, but any other questions or comments? Well, I have a second question while people are thinking. What about Rikyu's teachers and the kind of grand teachers, Takine no Jo and Murata Shuko? The way I learned the development of Rikyu's wabi was a kind of evolution, not a kind of revolution, which is what you're saying. And so Rikyu is coming out of these ideas of hie kareta, kind of chill and withered, that are having an evolution away from the basara, kind of extravagant tea. But you're not saying that didn't happen, but there's this new thing of Christianity as like a catalyst?
I thought that quite dramatic changes happened in Rikyu's tea ceremony from that original tea ceremony. I show you that.
So are you, obviously Oribe is his follower and is a Christian and then persecuted and forced to commit suicide. So that the Hachijo family themselves have Christian connections.
Yes, that I didn't have a time to explain, but
and so that's a sort of hidden symbolism in the seven Christian lanterns.
Yes.
A little bit of quiet resistance, maybe.
Yes, definitely.
I guess also politically. I mean, my dissertation is on the Momoyama period, so I'm interested in this. But Prince Hachijo Toshihito is adopted son of Hideyoshi, who is clearly a rival of the Tokugawa. And so even from a political dimension, a desire to have a little hidden kind of subversive element at Katsura would make sense.
Makes sense. But he married a Christian lady.
Which is not well discussed, that Christian aspect is still sort of written out of Japanese history. I looked up the Wikipedia entry of him during the present, and it doesn't mention anything of that
that's right.
part.
That's right.
All right, last chance for questions or comments. Yes.
I just wanted to support your point. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Support your point, actually. You were talking about kind of the contrast to the Roman Church. And the truth is that missionaries were Franciscans. And Franciscans actually were fostering simplicity and poverty and all that. So this goes actually support.
Yes. Right. Jesuits and Franciscans are very active. They have a mission in Kyoto, and Rodriguez writes about tea gardens, and sort of has a kind of they make an impression on him. So I think that would certainly that kind of humility from the Franciscans. Yeah. Right. Anything else? Well, hearing no further questions and being late in the afternoon, we will reconvene for a plenary at 4:15. Thank you all for attending, and thank you, Kurano-san, for another fascinating lecture.
Thank you very much.
some of you were able to catch our plenary yesterday morning, I've had the honor of working at the Japanese Friendship Garden as a designer since about 2005, 2006. Before that, my father was involved as a designer for the garden. And so what we're doing here today is extending the garden up into this eastern slope here to incorporate a tea garden that has been part of the master plan for many decades, but we've gotten to the point where we found an opportunity to put this garden in. We've been studying it for many years, what kind of a tea garden can come into the slope here. So I had to quickly go through those slides yesterday, but we studied having a tea house that actually had the large room and the small room combined together. You see those in Japan on different occasions. And then actually trying to incorporate ADA accessibility around one of the rooms as well. The challenge with that was that the footprint was getting very large. And as you can see from the slope here, if we do that, the wall, the retaining wall, was getting immense. And so using 3D modeling software, we were able to study how immense that wall might be. And so we decided to be a little bit more modest in our goals there and go with shade structure and Azumaya. And so we saw a lot of benefits in going with the Azumaya shade structure that's about 9 by 12 so that it could be used year round for sitting in. Anyone that would like to see get a nice view of the garden from the eastern slope to look down to the central portion. And so with that, all the grading and the retaining wall just got poured earlier this week. So after I talked a few minutes here, and once the stone arrangement, you could walk over to that side as well and see the kind of retention that we are incorporating to be able to work with the slope here. But we're trying to be as responsible with the grading as possible. The existing trees that we have, like a local pine that are in the backdrop right there, we wanted to make sure that we didn't encroach in their dirt zone, so that they would be able to be healthy over on that side. So we're trying to make sure that we're balancing that out when we were designing and trying to construct the tea garden here. And part of the feature of the tea garden, we have this element of water that starts from the north to south, like I was describing in my presentation yesterday. That's the spine. My father alluded to it as like the form of a East Asian style dragon. And that's when we think about dragons and storms and what it means in terms of East Asian philosophy too, it was very natural to think of this corridor right here in that form. But as we extend off of the central spine here, we have a northeastern stream that goes to the Kanon Bodhisattva statue that we designed and built just about a year and a half ago. And we have this one more appendage going up into this portion here. So what's going to tie this tea garden to the rest of the central garden is connecting to the water stream that's going to step and terrace up all the way to the fencing, up to the top of the slope over there. So we're pretty ambitious with the height of that waterfall and stream. So when you walk around, you'll be able to see where they've graded up to. This is, we're basically dealing with about 50 feet or more of elevation change. So we're going to have to test our pump equipment to make sure that the water can get up that far. However, you know, with the waterfall and stream here, this gives a really nice opportunity to extend the aesthetics of the water feature system that we're able to design for the central stream. So I'm reminding myself of what my father, Dr. Nakamura, Kamena-san, we all worked on for the last 10 years, making sure to respect that while seeing some opportunities for incorporating some other dynamics of waterfall design and construction. When you look across waterfall features, not only in Japan, but across the world, there are so beautiful interpretations of how waterfalls and streams, how water meanders through the topography. And so where the existing trees are, how the contours form here, I wanted to make sure I was respecting that as it meandered its way up the hillside right here. And so what our demonstration this morning is, you know, as you know, with live construction, nothing goes exactly according to plan. We're still bringing some boulders down. So hopefully, as you walk through, you'll have an opportunity to come back a little bit later, in an hour or so, or maybe this afternoon, to see like a little bit more of the boulders placed. I can remember when we placed the waterfall boulders right there behind you. It took a day to set the first 3 or 4. If I don't think it was maybe 4 at that point. So it took a whole day. But once you get the basic structure in, you set that 1 or 2, and then everything starts to fall in place. It's pretty amazing. It's just that first one that takes a lot of thought and consideration. So this morning, trying to think about which boulder is going to go in the middle, we're starting with that waterfall right there. You can see that it terraces a couple of times. As you can see from the shell that we have. So we're going to find one that it's going to be a waterfall that splits into 2. One that's going to be nice and center. So when you're crossing the bridge, you're going to see a nice skeletal structure of that, and then the water will split around it. And then the backdrop behind those rocks here, that's going to be a larger, wide weir that water will table over. So trying to compose different choreography of water effects visually as well as sound as well. And so as we think about the level differences for the waterfalls as well, because I didn't want the water sound to compete with what you see behind you and the nice tripling that you have right here. So there's not only rock, the visual is important, but then audio, sound-wise, and then respecting the hierarchy of the stream and waterfall that exists so far. And so all those, and plus the topography here, you can see that there's some existing trees and plants, making sure that you can see it already with the removal of plants over right in front of the cherry tree right here. There's going to be some boulders we're going to set in front of it. And so how does that integrate with the waterfall and stream characteristics there? So there's a lot of contextual integration that goes into being mindful of as we start setting the first stones this morning and today. In terms of construction, for various reasons, including cost, we use a method of using a pond liner. Pond liner that's about 45 mil. It's a pretty thick pond liner. You can see it exposed. Sometimes we try to use soil and mulch, right, to cover it up, and planting as well. But then as the pond liner goes on top of compacted grade, we pour concrete that you get from a concrete mixer, and then it just goes in. There's not much aggregate in it though, but as it gets poured down, it's about 6 inches to 9 inches thick. So as you put the boulder down, sometimes when we know we're going to have a very large boulder, we try to thicken it about 9 inches. There's no reinforcement bar in here. We're just hoping that with the liner and the concrete, it'll protect waterproof enough so that we don't get leaks underneath. Because concrete does crack eventually. The liner helps you have the water stay in, and then we do have drains. Eventually, as water just goes down with the lower elevation, it'll find itself to go into the collection basin, and that all collects in the pavilion pond right there. It all connects together right here. So traditional methods have been to use what's called gunite to help pools are made, and so that's cost prohibitive for what we want to do, and plus part of the final portion of the Phase 2 master plan for the Japanese Friendship Garden that we initially completed in 2015, but we always had the idea of putting a tea garden over on the eastern side of the garden here next to this what was already an existing dry stream. So a lot of these boulders come from that dry stream that was here. Bernazio moved them out of the side. Bernazio is a head gardener here at the garden. And just a moment as it's going slowly up. And so the waterfall and stream, this water element is one of those important signatures that tie this garden space together with the central garden that we completed 6 years ago. And right now the boulder is starting to go up with the crane. Yeah, so when we initially started 7 years ago hoisting these boulders, everyone was scared to just have one cable, but yeah, everyone's learned that, okay, as long as we hoist it properly, it'll be pretty stable. And so, yeah, they did a really nice job of hoisting and putting that boulder on the cable. If it was not set properly, if it was angled a little bit, they would have to set it back down and try to find the center. In Japanese, we call it the tenba, the head. And if that is not properly placed, you can't expect to get the center putting it down. It has to be in proper location when you're starting to move it up. So a couple of the considerations here as it comes is we don't want to hit the boulder that we set first in the center. And so we have to be very careful. And so Mike, the operator, the crane operator, like he's focused very much. We don't want to bother him as he's giving instructions to the crane how to bring it down. Very nice, very nice. Good, yeah, the dirt side, yeah, Bernaccio, yeah. So Bernaccio, yeah, so this side is the face, yeah. So you can see because the crane is so high, it does little swings. So we have to make sure that we let the crane slow down and not move anymore, because even just a little movement up at the top could swing the boulder tremendously. The reason why I had a Bernaccio make this the face right here, you see that little indentation right there, that would make for a fun potential for the water to splash on that and to kind of spray out a little bit. Yeah, it was a little too smooth on the side that didn't have the dirt. But can you turn it 180, 180? Rotate 180. More. Okay. All right. And so, yeah, keep it and then rotate it back a little bit more. Okay. All right.
Are we okay on the back side? Straight down? All right, stable down. Like that, Keiji?
Right. And then so how many inches can we get it towards my right?
Like 4 inches more.
Because right now the mouth has gone, it's widening out more. So we want to make sure we open it up where your right foot is, Bernaccio, as much as possible.
Right here.
Yeah, we want that to
Let's
just...
let's push down first, because I have to see exactly how much we are from the liner down below.
Okay, no. It's not going to go down.
Oh.
How many inches right now, Bernaccio? Oh, stop.
Right there. We are... From the concrete.
Okay, no, I'm looking at that. See how right now it's very similar in height. I'd like to bring it up, bring it up 4 inches.
4 inches up. All right,
Cable operators love it when we say 2 inches and 1 inch.
that is the maximum.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. So are we able to rotate it? Counter, yeah, a little bit more. Okay, stop.
Right there.
So you could see that there's going to be some, we might put a weir right here, and then so splash right there. Yeah.
It can be a little bit more high.
Oh, I could?
It's fine.
If you do, okay, yeah, because if we put a rock right there where your knee is, what do you think the water elevation is going to,
Will be, yes,
about right here?
4 inches.
So it's going to be right here.
Yes. About
So
right.
yeah, okay, if we go up a little bit more, let's see, yeah, 2 inches.
2 inches. Yeah.
Okay, will that be easy?
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
Ok, ahora sí, pónganle lo que se ocupa abajo para ponerla.
So that will do a nice job of hiding the pipes in the back. It is a little bit high for the pittosporum, but what do you think, Bonaccio? We're going to fill.
Yeah. It's totally fine.
Yeah, okay. And then there's going to be another boulder right here. So maybe as you see this one going in, you start to visualize how the boulders are going to start terracing down, but we don't want to look like steps either. We're going to need to find one. And then so you can see how the water, just by setting this boulder, how the water is going to sneak through.
I like how it comes through that little notch right there.
Yeah. Like you see, like in Yosemite, like you see in
That'd
nature.
be like a
Yeah.
natural erosion kind
Yeah.
of thing, maybe over a million years.
And we're doing it here in the morning.
In a day.
Nice, very nice. Uh-oh.
Remember, always you guys need to remember, because this one here is just barely on here. Let's be careful, okay?
So right now, like I'm thinking about what's going to go on the left side, but also are we going to have opportunity today to put a boulder in front of that middle rock that's going to help stabilize it a little bit more. So there's a lot of scenarios that just have to go through your head as these boulders start to get placed, but then still maintaining the overall vision of the split water, you know, how to put the boulders in place to retain the soil. So there's flexibility and adjustments, but at the same time, what's the bigger picture, what you're trying to do, how you're supposed to compose it, how I want to compose it. Yeah, that's great. Now, so fortunately, Bernaccio always thinks ahead and bought like 24 blocks.
Ready for more?
Yeah, we might need more tomorrow. So yeah, that detailing of just trying to stabilize boulders underneath. Always have to have a couple of bags of like 8-inch to 12-inch cobble, and also 6-inch cobbles too, so that you could make sure you lock it in place like Legos almost. So they're just as important as the boulders themselves. So we wouldn't be able to stabilize that boulder in the middle without those 6-inch to 8-inch rocks that could lock in place. You know, one of the first things I learned from my father was just how when two rocks, just even points, just touch each other right there, that's the lock right there. It's unbelievable how much it just locks in place just from millions of years of geologic process that allows us, when you just take two rocks, because of their rigidity and strength, that locks it in place. Yeah. That's why if there's like a little point touching down there with some supports, it's okay because it'll stay in place. Yeah.
Keiji, how many hours have you budgeted to set stone for this waterfall?
For this, like I imagine that today and tomorrow we'll be able to set most of the boulders here. Yeah. So it's always the waterfall starting it off that takes a long time. The boulders along the side can go very quickly. And I was telling another group earlier about how I was working with Professor Nakamura on this side right here, as my father was with another crew at the top, and we met in the middle. We only had like a day or two left, and we were just plopping the boulders down on the sides. I was amazed. The process Dr. Nakamura uses, he was just like, "Oh, Keiji, just pick some boulders. Okay, I'm all, is that fine? Yeah, it's fine, fine." My father would be like, "No, no, turn it. No," and then like that.
But it all worked when they met in the middle?
Yeah, it all worked when it met, yeah. So it was very fascinating to see that very different process of boulder arrangement from those two. I think being able to get different perspectives, on anything really is very important. Because even with Japanese garden construction, maintenance, design, everyone comes with their own tastes and sensibilities, and understanding that there's different approaches is very important. There's not only one way. I think that's where design principles really come in important. It's like, how are you approaching the design? How you ultimately build it. Everyone's got their techniques, and as long as you're being safe and you're working in the spirit of the design. But Yeah, the design principles are, I think, what's important, the philosophy behind it. And the philosophy here, like in terms of extending the waterfall and stream up this hill, just really is an extension of the central stream that we had originally, that my father originally designed back many decades ago. That's the whole fusui concept of water flowing that carved the canyon here. And nature has carved this canyon here too. We're just putting the element of water literally in place, here. So we're not artificially putting water where it didn't create, this landscape. And so in terms of connecting with the central stream too, I had to be very sensitive to the sound of water. Do you hear, what kind of water sound do you hear? It's a very subtle trickle, trickle, and then the pavilion waterfall over to the left. So here it's going to be a very soft trickle until it gets to that waterfall here, where they're placing those, and then it starts to get louder and louder. So you have to choreograph with sound and audio as much as visual elements as well. And so as these boulders get set, also thinking about where you're standing on the ground here, boulders need to extend into the landscape here too, naturally, how you place them so that it looks like the stream and waterfall don't look like a separate entity from the landscape. So that's an important process of considerations, that there's enough boulders for placing out into the landscape as well. So that's why, you'll see boulders for a stream and system, but then there's always boulders, little moments where it's retaining for plants, but it makes sense, like in terms of how you space them out. And that's designer's sensibilities too, how many boulders they want to put where. But we usually work in odd numbers, 3 here, and then maybe 2 just at a side, so there's 5. Maybe it's 4 and 3. Usually it's not just one boulder unless it's very iconic, large enough, because scale of the boulder is very important as well. So you could see the Bernaccio and his crew using concrete blocks and boulders in place, and then so we wiggle it around. First step is to make sure it's not going to fall over, but then Mike, the crane operator, is going to slowly take pressure off of the cable by lowering the cable just a little bit by bit. So one of the trickiest parts about placing a boulder, especially vertically, is that the cable needs to escape. You need to be able to pull the cable out. And so usually where the cable comes out is where it's right at the tip, the bottom, where it hits the ground or another rock. So that's why you have to have cobble and rocks they could place around it, so it could sit on those cobble for that cable to escape. And we've had plenty of moments when it gets stuck, and so we have to problem solve how we're going to get it out. Sometimes we'll use a digging bar, but in this situation we can't use a digging bar because there's a lot of blocks and it's very heavy. So sometimes, it's worth the time that, if we're noticing that it's not locking in place, we'll lift up the boulder and bring some bigger rocks underneath to make sure that it's stabilized. So you have to embrace that that's part of the fluid process of stone arrangement, and why setting just even a handful of boulders could take a day or 2. But so if you notice that it's about 4 feet drop for this shelf right here, and purposefully we dug it deep and it comes back up because it's. I know it looks like a lot of fussing to put these boulders in, but it's because we created that vertical gap. We can't put these large boulders in. If you leave it too shallow a shelf, you're limited to using certain size boulders because you can't go down at that point, but you can always raise up by putting things underneath. And so that's an important lesson we actually learned in the garden on different parts of the waterfall installation here. Yeah, so right now they're just trying to make sure that they're able to stabilize it with the blocks and the cobble, so that I think the issue was that the cable was getting snagged.
Okay, cable down easy.
Are you okay on the right side, Bernazio?
Yes.
Okay. You might want maybe one of these, Bernazio. One of these, or yeah, it's coming to the right now.
¿Te despegó para acá? Sí, está un poquito para abajo. Okay. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you for coming to the previous group. Do you have any questions as you've been cycling through with people?
Where was this boulder found?
Huh?
Where was the boulder found?
Where was the boulder found? Actually, many of these boulders that you're seeing here were part of the dry stream that was here, and then we pulled the boulders out, put them up in the parking lot, and now we're just bringing them down after the shell and the liner. But we get these originally mainly from a company in Irwindale called Cal Blend. They make mostly mulch and compost, but they also sell landscape boulders. And so Mike McCain is his name, and he has been finding boulders for decades. And then my father worked with him since probably the 90s, getting boulders. So once you find a place where you like the boulders, it's important. Oh, so that's are we able to get it straighter, Bernazio? Because right now,
It's going too much.
yeah, it leaned down like this.
Okay.
It was like this, in which was nice. Now it's lying. Now it's lying sideways,
Okay.
like a 2x4 leaning on a wall.
Va a ir más así. Okay.
All right, now can you cable up easy?
So can you imagine the sound the water's going to make as it goes around that? Is that
More or less, yeah. Just from working on different type of scenarios, just even in this garden, like if you just walk at different moments, you see like how many inches water is dropping, and then what kind of effect that is, and then actually the form of the waterfall rock too. My father used to call it the kagami ishi, mirror rock, because as the water goes over, it's like a mirror, and so kagami ishi, mirror rock, as it goes over, and so. If it's rounded versus sharp, the water will spray out a little bit more versus it wearing a little bit more smoothly.
Okay. What about there, Keiji?
Are we able to rotate it counterclockwise? Wait, hold on. Yeah, it looks a lot better now.
Yeah, we're ready to push back. We can push more.
No, I think vertically it's okay. Are we able to get it to rotate like this, like maybe in a couple
like
inches?
this?
Yeah, so getting this way.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
Oh yeah.
Okay, ahí así que tengan ahí que no se muevan. Vale.
Ooh, okay, that's good.
Está bien, Lisa.
It's easy for me to say, that's good, just keep it there, versus being able to have the stabilization to make sure it doesn't move anymore from where it is. Yeah, that makes a big difference right there. Oh. Do you think the blocks are moving, Bernatio?
Move it and drop them on it, then they just break it up there.
It's looking okay still.
Okay, cable gun.
For
It's done, like I say, with plants around it, that softens the look.
Ya. Está pegado, por eso se pega ya y así está pegado. Ya está pegado los dos lados. Estamos pegados. Ahora se pegado. Pues movimiento de
oh, yeah, a little bit more. So we're going to, think about, how we're going to stabilize it on the back, over there.
Right there is ready. Here in the back.
Yeah. So you can see how it dropped a few inches. So how do we get the tension back?
Okay. I think we gotta lift a little bit and push the bottom towards the wall. Okay.
All right, now, if you were gonna pick the rock up a little bit.
Yeah, so vertical ones are usually the ones that create the biggest challenges. I remember when we were sitting, there's one vertical one at the waterfall up near the Kanon Bosatsu statue, and we actually put it in place. The cable got stuck, and as we were trying to get it out, or we were placing something else, it moved everything, and so we had to spend a couple of hours repositioning. The good news was that we were going to abandon a cable, which you really don't want to do, but because we had to readjust, we were able to get the cable back out. But yeah, these vertical ones, how we're able to give enough stability.
That rock was up there, that bag you told me to bring down. That big bag full of rock.
We haven't someone seen.
Oh yeah, there's a few right here. Yeah, so in terms of like the design process here, this waterfall and stream is part of the tea garden that was always part of the Phase 2 master plan. And so we always envisioned turning this natural drainage into this waterfall and stream. And so, but then I think I was talking about how the audio sound is very important as you were asking about the quality of the water. Well, when we look at different moments along the central stream, I had to make sure that we were keeping it flat enough here so that even with this little waterfall, it was going to match similar to the gentle sound quality of the stream right behind me. It's not until you get about 60 feet in that you have the waterfall drop that it gets a little bit more dramatic as we go up the hill. So we're being very mindful. That's why it's graded at a very gentle slope until it reaches that moment right there. And so respecting precedents, existing conditions, very important. And as it meanders here, you see we have the oak tree, we have some cherry trees, some planting that have been here. The waterfall meander, we take great cues from what already exists to meander the waterfall left to right. So it creates a nice zigzag motion. So as you cross the bridge here, you'll be able to see that water serpentine up the hillside right here as well. So the waterfall is going to go all the way, if you can see those melaleucas and up at the top, it's going to go right over to that top point right there. So it's about 40 feet, 45 feet of elevation change.
How did you decide on the alignment of the rocks? They're linear here, but they're kind of like the position of these rocks are different, but that's a linear alignment there.
Yeah, so as you're thinking about the characteristic of what you want this waterfall to look like, it's very important to take photographs and to start sketching on them. And so technology is really great these days that you're able to draw on a photo you take on the iPhone or the iPad, and I draw it that way, and then I'll show Bernazio what I'm thinking in terms of the sketch, and so that helps him how he grades the stream as well. He has that visualization in mind, and so just even this morning, as we started to look at the boulders that we have, I started to sketch out, okay, I like the water to split, between the big boulder in the middle, and then so that's why, and then you start thinking about the basic Japanese aesthetic principles of asymmetry, triangulation, that you don't want things to feel like they're static in the landscape. The thing about East Asian design philosophy, this really gets into Chinese yin-yang,
Keiji,
yes.
it's fine.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Good, thank you. So 2x4s are they gonna keep it up?
For now. For now. Once that we put the concrete underneath, the 2x4s can go up.
Okay. Yeah, so the like asymmetry, working with triangulation, odd numbers, those are principles that, we talk about, and when you see them in landscape, it makes sense, but it takes a lot of practice too. And so as I worked with my father for over 10 years to just kind of get those sensibilities, because his approach is even different from his mentor, Dr. Nakamura. And I worked with both in terms of stone placement in the garden. It's fascinating the different approaches they had. My father's very methodical and precise in laying every boulder. Nakamura sensei he said, okay, this edge right here, 4 or 5 boulders need to go quickly. Let's go, boom, 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 much more quickly. So it was very fascinating with that.
But these are 4 instead of the odd number that they recommend.
So this isn't, yeah, these are just boulders that are ready to be placed step by step.
They're not
These are not placed yet. Now, so usually we start with the waterfall, and that defines the characteristic, and we could start putting ones along the edge. And then so the plan is that today and tomorrow we'll set that waterfall and set more like right here too. I think that's all the time we have, having the crane till tomorrow. But it's not big deal too much because we're gonna keep on working next year on that up there as well.
Is there any reason why you start from the bottom instead of start from the top?
It's the logistics of trying to get this bridge done. So those type of conditions, are important to think about, like in terms of circulate. This is a live garden, so we have to think about not preventing the circulation for too much longer. And I know that, in working with Bernazio and the team here for many years now, that, we'll be able to work out the design up there.
Perfect scenario, you would have started from the top.
Not necessarily. For the central stream, we did start from the top, but we had to work our way out. Mike was probably there when we were working on the central stream, like the crane operator. We worked our way basically outward because the crane had to come in before the structure pavilion was built, and we worked our way out. But then there were other situations where we had to kind of start from the lower side too. So as long as you have the big picture in mind of what you're trying to do, yeah, it's okay. Now, because right here, I composed the splitting of water. That next step is going to be a center piece. Water's going to flow over like a table there. Then up there, it's going to be more like a rugged mountainscape. It's going to drop, drop, drop. Yeah.
And how do you decide on the size of the rock to say, all right, this one?
You have to respect the fluidity of the process. That there's more or less certain sizes that are going to go, maybe, but where you thought a 24-inch rock you're going to use, all of a sudden the depth of what you have, maybe in your 4-foot rock, you need to incorporate it there. Actually, it depends on the scale of the project too. The East Los Angeles High School project I completed earlier this year, I had to quantify exactly because budget was very strict on that. And so exactly the boulders, so I picked like 90 boulders, and we used all of them, like out in the garden, and I picked different sizes. I had my drawing tagging, which boulders were going to be purchased and brought over.
Each boulder is what, about $1,000 or how much?
Per pound, per pound these days, it might be like 30 cents, but then all of a sudden that gets to become very expensive. So hundreds of dollars for like large boulder.
What about proportion? You tend to use bigger rocks up above, resemble a big mountain, then coming down will be smaller, or?
It depends on that moment of the water feature as well. So there is going to be some big ones up there.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. Because if you can see, I like the head of this middle rock, but of course, nature doesn't always make it the way you want. And so, you just have to stack it and, like put boulders in front, so that it'll still create the same effect. Yeah. But then, I think about the designs that like We were just talking about the Hoichi Kurisi, what he did at some of the projects in Illinois. You know, he's some gigantic rocks out there. So it's a matter of what resources you have too, and you know what kind of experience you're trying to. A lot of our boulders are kind of this size, and I've kind of used to working, you know, with these type of boulders that go about 4, even 6 feet boulders that we have, 8 feet, and down to like these 24-inch. So that's kind of become the way that I approach the boulders. So yeah, we definitely are going to be finding a lot of these kind of larger rocks up the stream because we're going to have such verticality that we're going to be spending a lot of time setting these kind of vertical boulders. Yeah, but you know, like I said, the sides go much more quickly. It's once we compose this right here. Okay, how many inches higher, Bernazio, is that right there? It looks like maybe
3 inches.
so. The relationship between the middle and then the right. Yeah, that looks like about 6, 8 inches.
Let me tell you right now.
Yeah.
Did you design this, or do you have a landscape designer do it for you?
I'm a landscape architect. Yeah, I'm the design. Yeah, I'm the designer for the Japanese Friendship Garden. Since you know, my father was doing it for decades here too, Takeo Uesugi, and so I've continued on to be the designer. Okay.
Oh no, actually 6 and 2.
Okay.
8 inches. 8 inches.
Okay. So as this one got set in place on the right side, you don't want to do the mirror on the left side. I usually don't. You know, like otherwise it would seem kind of unnatural actually. And so finding a boulder that could go on the left side that still kind of, it could be around the same height as that one in the middle, but then I'm imagining right now maybe one that extends angled toward us. This one is vertically boom, right? And then so maybe water, the way that this, maybe if you think about how boulders tumble down during flood events, this crash down, and you have to kind of have a balance between that crashing down that nature creates, but then how did it over hundreds of thousands, millions of years just look like it's set in place? So this left side, that's why asymmetrically, what can I set that's probably around the same height as the middle one, but then it's going to protrude out so that it doesn't look like it's a repetition of the middle. So that's, yeah, so we have to kind of help find right now. So just a second, yeah.
Watch out on that one. Be careful. Swing it back real easy. It goes right there, right?
Yes.
Are you trying to use that as a base right there?
No, it's just I gotta see what those we need.
A little more.
Eduardo.
A little bit more. And that swing. Just a little bit of boom down real easy. Watch out, goes down. Good, Keiji.
Thanks, yeah. 2 boulders in the morning.
You're doing a lot of talking and explaining to the groups that keep coming by, too.
It's definitely a process.
Maybe it's too high.
I was trying to see what kind of width to have there. Oh, for that side, yeah, it's not going to be this boulder, Renatsu.
Yeah, it's too small.
Yeah. If anything, I'm thinking it's going to be something that's going to come out toward us a little bit more. So it might be kind of a large rock.
Maybe that.
Yeah, let me measure.
A little bit more.
Yeah, so
Okay.
let's see, can you measure this? Because the mouth right here, you know, that's what we're kind of limited to as well. Wait, let me see right here. So, you know, we're dealing with 17-inch about to keep a nice mouth right there. But then what
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here to share some of our experience and knowledge about Japanese landscaping design and installation. Again, my name is Kohei Owatari, and my topics today is the practical methods of Japanese garden design and installation in Southern California region. We are working for the Japanese garden for last 20 years, so I can share some of a daily basis of knowledge and then designing and installation. And so we need to understand what the difference between Japan and Southern California. Number one is what are the challenges of designing and installation of Japanese garden in Southern California. And then how do we adapt the Japanese elements in California? And sorry about it, I gotta push it. And number three is how are Japanese gardens evolving or sustained in Southern California? So let's continue about challenges. What are the soil and water difference between Japan and California? In Japan, it's so many rainfall throughout the year, and then the soil is pretty good all the time, and fertile soil, and it makes the soil acid. And then pH 7 or lower, please correct me if I'm wrong. In Southern California, it's less rain. We have almost no rain between April to December. Almost no rain. Once in a while, we have a rain and thunderstorms. And most of the water is hot water from the California water system. And then also various soil types that makes the soil very alkaline. Sorry. Okay, so the pH 7 or higher. And there are so many different architecture style, from a ranch style, country style, hacienda, Spanish, and various contemporary architecture styles. And then another issue is Southern California's hot and dry climate. The picture over there at the down bottom is very extreme, but it's very hot, and dry climate is true, something like that. But it all depends on location-wise. Close to the beach area has moistures. I live in eastern side of the San Diego, and this is more like very close to the beach area, coast area. And then this morning we had a lot of foggy fogs, but our area only like 30 miles inland. It's from 7 o'clock, it's just fine, dry weathers. And then those things limited a certain key element of a Japanese garden. And also municipal landscaping code and guidelines. Most of the cities, counties has their own guidelines and then restrictions. In a big city, developers create so many communities, and the community has HOA, homeowners associations. They have own landscaping guidelines, and the limitation of a certain key element, again, of the Japan gardens, we have to adapt those restrictions. And the other issue is the water conservation. Again, we don't have much rainwaters, and then most of water is Sierra Nevadas and those kind of, snow water is changed to the water. So that's the limited water system. So we have to conserve the water rather than using old school sprinkler system. We use a drip system. And then nowadays, maybe like the last 5 years, every single project we do, we use the drip system rather than sprinklers, except the grass area. But even grass we can still use, we can start using drip system. And then, so that reason, we design more dry gardens. In Japanese, we can do a lot of kaisansi using gravels and those kind of stuff. And then, of course, we have to use the water-saving drought tolerance plants such as lavenders, and then also native plants. Soil conditioning. Since we have alkaline soils, we use a lot of organic matters, such as a peat moss, and then also fertilizer. We use a bone meal, plant meal, and then bring more sandy soil to create acid soil. And another issue is the fire hazard. We have a long season of wildfires. We have to avoid flammable plants, and then separation from house. In San Diego, such as the Rancho Santa Fe HOA, specific restriction that we cannot plant trees and shrubs in 3 feet away from a house. And one example, we designed a small kaisansi, a dry garden in Irvine, California. Well, this time a small rock garden at the front of a condo was not approved by the HOA because gravel were not allowed the guidelines. And then instead of gravel, most style ground covers called the carpet of stars was used instead, and the HOA approved it. Well, since we talk about the moss, in Japan, there are so many moss gardens because of weather and soil conditions. It's perfect for moss. But instead, I saw a lot about dwarf mondograss here in the Japanese garden. We use a dwarf mondograss, and then a few years it's going to be one big flat of the green. But a certain condition, this dwarf mondograss is not really good. So again, the carpet of stars is introduced to us, our company, just about a year ago, but we find out we find out it's less water to use, and it stay green all the time, and it's very strong. We can step on it, and it survived very well. And also diamondia. I think diamondias came from South Africa, but we use a lot. This particular project is located in Del Mar, California, San Diego County. This particular year, we had a lot of rain, and then I took this picture in May, but it's the Japanese plants like Japanese maple and hydrangeas, again a mondo grass, and azalea was thriving very well. So I think rainwater is very, very important for the plants. And we planted a little bit of diamondia between flagstones. Very important tree for Japanese garden. Cherry blossom trees. As you see, a lot of Japanese blossom tree in this particular garden. Actually, this blossom tree is called pink cloud. I think it's from Taiwan, originated from Taiwan. But this one is only adapted very well in Southern California. We try like 3, 4, 5 different species, but probably 20% survivals. This one, maybe 80 to 90% of a survival rate. But it looks really good. Every year between middle March to 1st of April, and then this garden is the full bloom. Just for the information, this year, this is my house. We planted about 20 years ago. I think this is a max height. And I have another 20 more smaller cherry trees. But this year, I don't know why, maybe the climate issues, only 20% flowers bloom, that's it. So maybe I'm hoping that the next year it's going to be full bloom. How we are dealing with this challenge, Wara Basin and Kakehi. Kakehi is a bamboo spouts for the Japanese tsukubai. But this bamboo, because of very dry and hot weather in Southern California, start cracks in a few months, in a worst case scenario, but sometimes 6 months, in 1 year, 2 years, or depends on location. Some clients really want real Japanese bamboo spouts, so we make it like that. The top one is only, we finished about 3-4 months ago. And then Wara Basin is from China. And then right side and bottom, since bamboo is not really good for the long-lasting period, we use a copper pipe. I think it's a 1-inch copper pipe and then half-inch horizontal spout. And then I think it lasts almost forever, 30, 40, 50 years. Custom-made stone products. Some Japanese material or elements are hard to obtain here, so we make them at our shop. Fortunately, we have a lot of availability of stones, and different kind of stones and borders. So we pick the right size, right textures, right shape, and then we just use the grinders to create a bowl. And then the top one is just as is. We just made a hole, and it's just a fountain. This is not the Japanese, but left side is the big borders. We just create a bowl. And then that one's bamboo. It's Del Mars. It lasts pretty long, I think 3-4 years. No problem at all. And then right side, the top is the most of from China. And some we made it by ourselves. Aging variations. Fortunately, we can import Japanese roof tile. It's called the kawara from Japan. So we use kawara for the border between driveway and then a sidewalk, and create a border so we can put a Mexican beach pebble. And right side is just smaller 3/8 gravel. This is in San Diego. Middle picture is actually, this is a blue stone from back east. But it shows very nice border, and then it served the purpose very well. Right side is the cheapest way and the easiest way to install aluminum edging. This particular one is black, because the black is less visible. And then again, this is driveway, sidewalk, and then Mexican beach pebble, and then bender board, and a small 3/8. Cheapest one is plastic bender board, but we don't use it because it looks not so good in Japanese garden. How's the Japanese garden evolving in Southern California? Okay. This 400 years old Japanese millstone into contemporary garden design as art pieces. Sometimes we must overcome or maneuver over HOA regulation. To get HOA approval, we didn't use this as the Japanese garden steps. So instead of steps, we use it as an art piece. So HOA approve it easily. Same house. Again, this is a very high-end residential area, Dana Point, by the beach. And of course, HOA regulation exists. And this garden's design was approved by HOA with a blending art and some Japanese garden-inspired elements. Especially this stone lantern in a water basin. Stone lantern is 8 feet high. We used a big crane twice. We made a mistake in the first time, so we hired another crane to make it straight. and then Japanese basin is 5 feet high. It's a real Japanese element. But the modern stone object and traditional Japanese stone lantern coexist and blend in with the contemporary architecture. And I believe the modern architecture fits very good with the organic elements of a Japanese-inspired design. See the wall is in Japanese hanchiku. Here it's called Ram's Earth. And then usually Ram's Earth is only for the standing along a wall, but this one is the first time the city of Dana Point approved for structure sound wall, and this is part of a house. And I don't know how the engineer did, but the engineer and the contractor taught City of San Diego Engineer Department, Building Department to made this approved. So it's the first time in Dana Point. It's huge. This is all around the house except the back areas. It's probably, I don't know, 2 feet or 3 feet thick, and it looks really good. So I created a Japanese garden. It's like a blend into the contemporary house and Japanese garden. You don't see much, but it's the hand chisel stone pathway. It's a lot of individual border steps. And interestingly, this borders as art pieces, we just pick up from nowhere in the large nurseries. It's just laying down for many years. I just bought it. Now it's become an art piece. Traditional Japanese stepping stone and hand chisel stone wall blend in with a contemporary architecture with a ram's earth wall and a cotton metal. Cotton metal is a vegetable gardens. So left side is a stone wall, and then we bought huge borders, a flat top, to make it steps, and then cotton metal is the back is served as a vegetable box, and then we use water-saving plants, lavenders and liliop, and then other flowers. And the right side is the stone border, aluminum edging, and then it's called a copper canyon to make the separation from a wall to a garden area. And the bottom is the black quartz slates. Very unique experience, and then application of a Japanese-inspired stone wall and a stone border. This is very modern church, a chapel in Point Loma Nazarene University in San Diego, California. Architect called us and asked us to install very organic stone wall. So this is one example of the very modern Christian church, and then Japanese Zen blended and create this beautiful structure. And at the bottom is by hand chisel natural stone wall, supports artistic and contemporary architecture. This is not a veneer. It's like a solid stones. Not big, but it's 12 inches plus minus. We cut everything at our workshop and then put the numbers and then took to the job site. Oops, sorry. Okay. This is ultimate adapting make rain chain fall in Southern California. Make a rain fall in Southern California. This is a good example that the Japanese garden elements can be adapted in California gardens. We have no rain for a long time, again from March to April to December, and dry and sunny day, but we came up with some good idea. rain chain fountain system with circulating water. No rain, but 24 hours, 7 days, and 365 days, you can see the movement of water, and you can hear the soothing sounds of a rain chain or rain. I think it's one of pictures, a video. Can you click it? Oh, not that one. Previous. Yeah, I think it's one of the pictures. Oh, no? No, left one is just. No. No? Oh, okay. So I have one in my house, 24 hours, 7 days, 365. So because of this particular challenging, but we still have an increase of demands of a Japanese garden. Example, last couple of years, the hospice, or a big hospital system, asked us to build the healing gardens, meditation gardens. And I don't have any pictures at this moment. The employee, for the hospice, we design and install a healing garden and meditation garden so they can enjoy. We have 2 water features, a lot of a seating area with the big borders, and we use organic materials. And that's one example. And then maybe some people knows about it. 5-6 years ago, maybe 7-8 years ago, Camp Pendleton in the Oceanside, it's the biggest Marine Corps base. They built beautiful 4-story hospital, but it's 4 floors and about 60 by 20 feet area. They created kare-sansui, few borders. That's it. Simply just the borders, and just like Ryoanji in Japan, in Kyoto in Japan. They created for the trauma patient, for the meditations and healing gardens. So we are maintaining, we have to make a report mark changing every 3-4 months. So, but those kind of, even US Navy or its government is the taking care of those people by using Japanese kare-sansui. So that's the evolution of Japanese gardens. That's it. I'm glad to share some of my experience and in the project. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, any questions? Practical method? This is all yours.
Can I just catch the name of the cherry tree that you said does well here?
Yes.
Which one was it?
A pink cloud. Pink. Yeah, because pink cloud is more pinkish. Japanese Somei Yoshino is more lighter, close to the white. And I can buy, or you can buy Higan, Higan. It's more like a cascading. Yeah, and then also Kwanzan is beautiful double flowers, but it's rather difficult to grow here in Southern California. Yeah. Well, yes, by the code, and so the meditation garden hospices must be drip system. But drip system save a lot of water for sure, and also because of a pinpoint, and then longer period of time, but it's a save a lot of money. I mean, of money in the waters. Yeah.
So amending the soil, primarily organic amendments?
We imported a lot of good soil, sand, and then organic matter first. And PMOS, small area we use a PMOS, but big area just the organic matters. Yeah.
No synthetic amendments to help retain water from the rainy season?
Yes, yes. And but drainage system must be up to code too. Yeah, so no erosion or anything. Yes.
So with the drip system, are plants that you're using to substitute for loss, such as the Denolia and the Pastor-Ivars or grass, does that all work out okay with drip?
Dwarf mondograss is really doing good in semi-shade area, but it's the east side, Escondidos, Rancho Bernardo, outside always sunny place. Little shaky because 60% successful rate, 40% not so good. Yeah, from my experience.
So your drip emitters are getting good coverage, like a spray emitter, like with ground cover?
Ground covers, we use the 12 inches on centers. So big area, we have to put so many lines of a tubing system. Yeah, but it's farther, to save a lot of water.
How do you disguise?
Oh, it's underground, 2 inches below. Yeah, and also we can put mulching to hide it.
I have a question about your crew. Are they all Japanese?
No, one of my crew over here is the Diego. No, it's very difficult to get a Japanese employee. Everybody go to IT. Yeah, so, yeah.
Because my experience is, perhaps that you could talk about how you teach your crew to understand the aesthetics and then also the work that goes into maintaining a Japanese garden.
Technical matters because daily basis, I supervise for many years, so they know how to do it. And even stone wall, we have to hand chisel everything, but as we can, the gap cannot make the four corners. Those kind of stuff is a very simple rule. So we teach how to do it, and then the borders, the Kanazawa, we try to pick up the right borders at the first place, so they don't have to worry much, because we determine this is top with a tape, yellow tape, this is top, this is front, this is a back, and then how many inches are above the ground. So for the first time, and then, but he knows nowadays, and it's principle of the Kanazawa is like a triangular, not symmetrical. So they know pretty good. And technical, no problem at all. But it's more like a personal preference in once in a while. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning to everybody from Japan. Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we're good.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Good morning to everybody. And good afternoon there. Thank you very much for inviting me to do this presentation. My name is Juan Pastor-Ivars. I am originally from Spain, but I have been living in Japan for the last 12 years. I lived 6 years in Kyoto, where I obtained a master in landscape architecture. And then I finished my PhD about, the topic was about Japanese gardens, and I obtained my degree from the University of Valencia in Spain. After living 6 years in Kyoto, I moved to Kanazawa, where I am working as a research associate of the United Nations University Institute for the Advanced Study of Sustainability. And we are a small operating unit of that institute, which is called Operating Unit Ishikawa Kanazawa. So just I'm living in a traditional machiyan, a traditional house, and then I'm developing or designing a small Japanese garden. Right now it's under construction. And in that house, there is also a tea ceremony room. So this was the title and the topic of my PhD thesis, which it was called Ma and Oku, Distance and Depth, Ogawa Jihei and the 19th Century Japanese Garden. You can check it in this link. I will share it there in details. And then as an architect, I study the gardens of the famous Meiji period garden designer Ogawa Jihei VII. And I studied the relationship between the space of the gardens and the background and the flow of the water coming from the Lake Biwa, which is behind of these mountains in Kyoto. So from that spatial point of view that I researched as an architect, then I have been researching in Kanazawa, in the city where I'm living now, from an ecological, trying to combine both aspects, the aesthetics aspects of Japanese gardens and the ecological aspects of the Japanese gardens. This is another publication which is called The Clearing, the Veil and the Flow, the New Commons of Japanese Traditional Gardens in Kanazawa City. You can find this publication in this link. So by here I explain three archetypes, spatial archetypes of Japanese gardens: the clearing, the veil, and the flow. By flow it means the water, the veil the woods, and the clearing means empty space. So take a look if you are interested later. So today I would like to present about one publication we did in Japan, in Kanazawa, which is called Restoring Kinship with Nature Through Japanese Gardens. The challenge to achieve a sustainable commons in Kanazawa. You can find this book in this link and you can download it for free. It is 132 pages. So first of all, let me introduce you about the city of Kanazawa. As you know, here is the city, the capital, Tokyo. Kyoto is located here, and Kanazawa is facing to the continent here. So it is facing to the Japanese Sea. So one of the biggest characteristics of the city is the extreme weather. So winter are very cold. The temperatures in winter are very cold, and then in summertime it's quite hot and humid. Another characteristics of the city of Kanazawa is the abundance of water resources. In fact, Kanazawa means marsh of gold. And the reason is because behind the city there are high mountains, and when the snow melts, it originates two rivers in the city. And then between the two rivers, there is a network of water canals, around 55 water canals. And then there are also natural spring waters through the city. So this is one of the famous gardens of Kanazawa, Kenrokuen Garden, and which is said that it is one of the three gardens you must see in Japan. So the project I'm explaining today, it's one part of the main project that we are carrying out in our operating unit, which is called Sustainable Urban Nature SUN Project. And let's be the gardeners of our cities. So it is rated with the UN policy and other organisms. So this project has mainly two big strategies. One is the green conservation, and the other one is the green growth. So today I will be explaining about the green conservation part. The green growth, it refers to the strategy that we would like to reutilize the abandoned properties, abandoned houses and abandoned plots, because Japan is facing, as you know, it's having a declining population. Many cities are shrinking. same in Kanazawa. So, for example, there are around 10% of the properties are abandoned in Kanazawa. So we would like to reutilize these abandoned properties to build a new green infrastructure and combine this new green infrastructure with the conservation of the traditional green infrastructure to create a model of sustainable urban nature. Because the problem is that if we foster this green growth, who is going to maintain this new green infrastructure when the population is declining? We will not have enough manpower to maintain. So that's why we think that the maintenance of this green infrastructure should be done by the community together with the government. So this is the concept of this big project, the sociological restoration. We combine these three projects: sociological restoration, green infrastructure, and multi-level governance. So we think that we are in a system that humans have the same like nature, and the socio-ecological system is degraded. We need to find a new balance between these two systems. For that, we would like to utilize the benefits of the green infrastructure and then to conduct multi-level governance with the green commons, which means that share benefits and responsibilities. So these are the green infrastructure benefits. For example, the one I will be talking today about the traditional green and blue infrastructure. So there are different benefits we obtain from a green and blue infrastructure. Environmental aspects, the production of biological diversity, carbon sequestration, heat island mitigation, etc. Also social inclusion, social cohesion, and place belonging, and economic health, well-being, land properties, values, and tourism improvement. So let me talk about the traditional green infrastructure that exists in the city of Kanazawa. This is a image we developed. Hope you can understand it. So these are the high mountains of Kanazawa and the two rivers, the river which is called Asano and the Sai River. And between them, there are a network of 55 water canals. And then there are three plateaus, the plateau of Futatsu, Kodatsuno, and Noda. And between these two plateaus, there are two valleys. And there is a network of gardens that they are being irrigated by the water canal network or by natural spring water. That's why we distinguish two types, the spring water garden and the canal water garden. So we have been mapping these two types of gardens. As you see, this is the example of one of the water canal running through the city. And then the water goes from one garden and then goes to another garden. So it's a shared water between these owners, but also of the rice paddies that are located at the outskirts, because originally this water canal was created to irrigate the rice paddies and also to provide fire protection for the castle of Kanazawa. And they were utilized for different purposes, for example, cleaning vegetables, dyeing fabrics, etc. So this is one of the biggest. You can find this network of water canals and gardens in other parts of Japan, but mainly they are only happening in one part of the city. But here in Kanazawa, we can find this typology for the whole part of the central part of the city. So this is the famous garden of Kenrokuen in winter. So we call Kanazawa Fall Garden because the water melts in early March, and then this water is irrigating different gardens. Kenrokuen is the famous garden of Kanazawa, but apart of Kenrokuen, there are small private gardens that they are following the same model of Kenrokuen, utilizing the natural water of the canals. So, for example, this is a small garden which is called Senda, the garden of the family Senda. And then this is a picture of spring. And then this is the canal. and then the water comes inside the garden and creates a small stream, a small pond, and then it abandons the garden from the back and joins again the water canal. In the past, there was a machine here to incorporate the water from here to here and to create a waterfall. So this is the other type of the garden I have been introducing, the spring water canal. This is the garden of Shindensha, a temple which is called Shindensha, and it's located at the foothills of one of the plateaus. So here at the bottom of the pond, there is a natural water spring irrigating the garden, and actually the garden is the pond. The shape is like a vessel. So when it rains and the water from the rain and the water running through these artificial hills goes to the pond and it overflows, then the water goes out. So what I would like to highlight today is the biocultural diversity of the Japanese gardens in Kanazawa. As you know, biocultural diversity is defined as the diversity of life in all its manifestations, biological, cultural, and linguistic, which are interrelated within a complex socio-ecological adaptive system. So it's the combination of cultural diversity and biological diversity. This biocultural diversity, it was an important concept for the United Nations University, and that's why we are researching about this concept in our unit. So the previous map I have showed to you, and here I would like to explain how related are the gardens I present you with the crafts that are produced in the city of Kanazawa. Actually, the city was designated as a creative city because of the crafts that they are producing. So, for example, I will be back to this map, but for example, this is another small garden, which is called Hiraki, the garden of the family of Mr. Hiraki. Again, this garden is located beside one of the water canals, another one, which is called Kurasuki. So the water comes inside the garden from here and it creates a small stream because the plot is not that big. They don't have enough place to create a pond. So it's mostly a stream, a small stream. And this garden belongs to Ashigaru. It was the infantry. So many of these gardens were related to the people of the war. Kanazawa was a castle town city, and it was created by the lord, which is called Maeda. He surrounded himself by important infantry, and many of these gardens belong to that infantry. And right now they belong to the descendants. So Mr. Hiraki is living here, and he is utilizing the garden and the water canal to dye traditional clothes in Kanazawa for many purposes. So he needs to go through the garden. He gets inspiration from the vegetation of the garden to create the motifs. And then he makes all these pieces naturally with natural glue and colors, but he needs to bring the cloth inside the water canal to remove the lines of the glue created with the materials of the rice to remove this glue. And at the same time in the garden, there are living small fishes and so on. So this example we can find in the different gardens I have been showing you here. So for example, there are places where they are utilizing the garden as a background to create the famous food of Kanazawa. And another garden, for example, he's a lacquerware, and he moved to the garden because he wanted to have a beautiful background to create his crafts. And we have seen many fireflies in early summer. Or this professor, she is a master of the Kodo incense the path of the incidents, and we have found different small animals. But the problem these days is that, as I said, because of the declining population, some of these gardens are being abandoned. So, or some of the gardens are not being well maintained because the owners, they are getting old and they cannot do by themselves. So, and this garden, for example, it was abandoned because the owners, they pass away, and the descendants, they are living in the big cities, in Tokyo, and they don't come back here. But slowly, many of these gardens are being destroyed, and they are reconverted into parking plots. So you can imagine the big difference for the environmental and for the landscape of the city. So then we conducted a survey with the owners of these gardens, and we asked them about the maintenance task, which ones they were done by landscape company, and which ones they were done by themselves. So we find out that cleaning the fallen leaves, the pond cleaning, and the weeding, it was done by the owner, but because they couldn't do by themselves, we thought, why we cannot do together as a volunteers. So that's why we test a joint maintenance experience pilot for these gardens. Because as a citizens, we obtain many benefits of these gardens, it purifies not only aesthetically, but also ecologically and socially. So we get the benefits of these gardens, but then we should commit to preserve these gardens for the future. Then we implemented a pilot experience, which it was called "Let's Be the Gardeners of Our Cities." So we try to combine these concepts, ecotourism in urban areas, joint management, and education for sustainable development. And the problem is that only gardens which are preserved receive subsidies from the city hall, but only restoration is included, but not maintenance. But a part of these subsidies that only 5% of the gardens receive, the rest of the gardens, they don't receive any subsidy. That's why we thought we could do it as a volunteers to help in the maintenance task. So we created unique ecotourism experiences by small groups, trying to have little impact on the environmental and create strong human connections between the owners and the rest of the citizens. We designed 3 specific activities. One was cleaning workshop, the other one was learning seminar, and then the other one was a traditional visit. For that, we recruit at the beginning students of the different universities of the city, and we started cleaning different gardens of the city. So for that, we as a researchers, our task was to recruit the participants, to organize the events, and then to collect data for later to analyze the different aspects of the benefits that the participants obtain from that cleaning or from that learning seminar. The administration, they shared the tools with us. They were intermediate between us and the owners, and they provide materials, documents of the gardens, explaining the history, also the physical characteristics, or previous surveys that they have done about the trees, etc. So we asked the owners of the gardens, and 30% they were favorable to conduct cleaning, volunteer cleaning the gardens, and 40% they were not sure. Seminar and visit, it was easier to conduct in their gardens. So this is a pamphlet, flyer of the day of the seminar or the cleaning, and some of the pictures that we did on the day. So there were different contents in these seminars, mainly about these 3 aspects: environmental, history and culture, and design and tourism. And we invited different experts of the city to give the seminar. And we recorded more than 300 people that participated in 15 times that we developed this pilot experience. So these are some pictures of the volunteers cleaning, and here you can find the students, the public administrators, and the owners cleaning together. Here, mainly, we clean this garden in March and October because after winter time, there is a lot of mud that it is collected in the pond because the water is natural. So I will share now a video that the local TV created. So there is a sound.
金沢は古くそして新しい町、新しくそして古い町、その金沢の魅力を探して今日も町を歩きます。
It's in Japanese.
手間のかかる日本庭園などの掃除、これは一石二鳥かもしれません。
お墓を掃除する人、池の中で落ち葉を取る人、作業しているのは外国人です。こちらの寺は交流の場として庭や屋敷を提供しています。
金沢では外国人の方たちがボランティアでもって掃除をなさっているという、そういう風景が見られるそうですね。この方は研究員として日本庭園を勉強されているらしいんですけども、あちこち訪ねて歩いているうちにどうも手入れが行き届かないと、雑然と放置されて荒れているという状況に心を痛めて、仲間の外国人の方たちを募って一緒にお始めになったそうなんですね。
近年さまざまな事情で庭の管理が行き届かない寺が増えています。そんな中始まった外国人による清掃活動。日本庭園に興味があり、掃除することで心も洗われると人気の取り組みになっています。掃除のお礼はお茶会。抹茶を飲み、またきれいになった庭園を眺めてゆっくりと日本文化に触れます。
掃除をすることは心の掃除だなんて、そういうことも言いますね。私たち日本人が気がつかなかった日本庭園の掃除といいますか、いろんな形の関心を集めているということは、やっぱり私たちも大いに反省しなきゃいけないことだと思いますね。
善意によって保たれた庭園、心もきれいになる風景です。
So here you can read Kokoro no Seis.
金沢承継でした。
Here you can read Kokoro no Seis. So it was one way to heal the heart or to make more peaceful your mind. Because what we find here, it was that So actually, when we started conducting this activity, the main purpose was to maintain together the garden or to clean the garden. But we realized that the garden by itself, it was a optimal place, an appropriate place to create a relationship, good harmony between the humans. So it was a good place for integrate the participants between them and to create new relations between all of them, to improve their human relations. So after that, we conducted survey to non-participants, and we conducted survey in the station of Kanazawa to other citizens of Kanazawa or Japanese tourists or overseas tourists. And then we asked them if they would like to join these activities, and 40% they were favorable to join the cleaning activities. So I'm going to conclude soon. So we found that after conducting the survey, we conducted this survey before and after cleaning the gardens. And this survey, it is called PANAS, and PANAS, and it measures the positive effect and negative effect before and after conducting the activity. We find out that after the activity, this activity increases the positive effect by 80% and reduce the negative effect by 54%. Mainly because people felt more inspired, determined, and proud, and they felt less upset, irritable, and nervous than before doing the activity. So we find out that it was a good place to improve for the well-being of the participants. Also, about the kinship with nature, these are different benefits we obtain from the cultural ecosystem services. So we measure, we ask them about these different benefits, and the answer mostly was about the affinity with nature. So the garden was a good place to recover the kinship with nature. So we thought about this chart that kinship between humans, when we have harmony, we are able to establish kinship with nature, and then we obtain well-being. So that was one of the important aspects to sustainable maintain urban nature. Before thinking who will maintain or not, we should reestablish the relation between these humans and their surrounding nature. Right now, we are moving to another step. And as I said, we are evaluating the benefits of this traditional green infrastructure. And one of the benefits is the production of biological diversity. So we have been conducting a wildlife survey for this year, and we have found small reptiles and tritons or small shells that they don't live anymore in other parts of the forest, but they have created their own habitat in these gardens. So we are now thinking how to integrate this biological diversity with the eco-tour so that people can come to find these animals and to learn about the life cycle of these animals. That's why we are thinking how to integrate the cycles of the wildlife, the maintenance, and the cycles of activities and culture of Kanazawa Japanese gardens, because the owners need to know about the life cycle of the animals, because, for example, if they are putting their eggs, and they should not remove the leaves that they are in these areas of the ponds, because they put the eggs around here, and other aspects. So it's been quite unique and particular knowledge and learning of these small gardens about the wildlife, maintenance tasks, and the culture. These are some of the pictures of these activities. And we found that we increased the pride of the owners. Now they feel more pride about their small gardens they have, because they know more about the biological diversity that they have in their gardens, and they know that they are not alone when maintaining these gardens. And also they ask about more subsidies to the city hall. We were able to strengthen the intergenerational links between the young students, the young people, and the old people. And then we finally increased the awareness of the citizens about the rich biological diversity they have in their gardens. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the presentation. And what I would like to share is that in Japanese gardens, you can, it's a deep culture, so you can approach from many different fields. And I'm trying to combine this aesthetic background I learned in Kyoto and the ecological aspects I'm learning from the United Nations University. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Could you stay on in case we have anyone have questions?
Yes, sure.
How many volunteers are involved in this project now?
Yeah, I'm going to repeat. How many volunteers are involved in this project now?
Well, we don't have, maybe we have a fixed number of around 30 volunteers, but before the COVID situation, we used to recruit this volunteer 1 week in advance, and they were foreigners living in our prefecture, or they were tourists that they were staying in the hotels.
Did you catch that?
We were in this information of that. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry?
Yes.
Yeah. So we were recruiting these volunteers directly from the hotels or from the station. So there are many people that they wanted to have their usual course going to the big garden of Kenrokuen, but there were also other tourists that they wanted to have an alternative type of experience, and they were pleased to join these activities. So let's say that we have a fixed number, but it was also they were also participants that we were recruiting 1 week in advance.
Okay. We have another question.
You spoke about diversity of reptiles. I wondered about diversity of birds, and especially wondered about diversity of insects.
So the question was, you spoke about the diversity of reptiles and fish, and there was a question about diversity for birds and insects, and if you'd looked at that.
Yes, thank you very much for your question. Yes, we are, okay, yeah. We are conducting 4 types of, the method of the survey, it's capturing, then recording, and then we have a voice recorder, and we also place cameras, and also environmental DNA survey. So we haven't the results. We haven't got all the results, but we are also recording for 1 month. We have placed the voice recorders there to find out which birds they visit. One of the biggest problems is that the urban nature is being fragmented. So, for example, in the past, beside these gardens, there were other woods that they had been destroyed, mainly because the monks of the temples, they have transformed the ground of the graves. It was natural ground, but now it is concrete. So they have cut the trees. So that is affecting the population of birds visiting the garden because they don't go from one canopy to the other one. About insects, we are also analyzing especially the spiders and the small insects. So it is a survey that it is analyzed. Sorry, it's Japanese here, but the survey consists of it's analyzing mammals, birds, insects, reptiles, amphibians, fishes, and other mollusks and other small animals.
Okay, and I believe you said there's going to be there's a link people could find the publication that goes with this. Is that correct?
Yes, I have the links here. So let me know later, the organizers, if I should share how to share the links. I can share later with the organizers these links where you can download these publications.
So
is that fine?
I think one more over, perhaps, to get to the link for the...
Yeah. But I think the link I better send you by email, no? Because
So if you have your program, I think you could just type in the title of this of the talk, and you could get the publication, which seems like it has more details about those other, like the charts in there, right? About the biodiversity.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Any other questions? Well, we are right at 4 o'clock, so thank you so much to all of our presenters and everyone here in the audience, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Basically, stepping stone started to be used for tea ceremony, and we say 70% for usage and 30% is for aesthetic. Here is the typical stepping stone, but the intention of stepping stone in tea garden is to slow your pace down. So today I am going to introduce some typical Japanese garden element, and we want to appreciate them, and also we want to have some critical eyes on them. Okay, maybe can you let's come this way.
Okay.
This is nicely, arranged stepping stone to the point is to come here. You have to watch on your step.
Yes.
Right? you have to watch.
Look
Yeah,
down.
it's kind of staggered. It's kind of dangerous. It could be slippery. So the intention is really force you to watch your step, and by doing that, you slow down. Okay, again, stepping stone. So sometimes each stone has different color, and that really, promotes you to look down more carefully. Different shape, different size, right? So the arrangement of stepping stone itself can be our design of the garden. And okay, let's, all right. Please come. So now, you landed on flat, bigger stone. So what do?
Rush.
No, you feel, you feel okay, and
Kind of
secure, you're safe, and then you look up, then you find something new. This is a kind of soft fascination. If you keep looking from that point to this point, hearing this sound, looking all the way from there to there, there's no surprise. But you have been kind of occupied, your mind has been occupied with working on that like jigsaw puzzle, the stepping stone, and finally you feel like a release, and then you look up, oh, yes. This is a small trick of the Japanese garden, tea garden. Within very small space, we need to create small surprises, and then the effect we are targeting, looking is from the mindset at the gate and mindset in front of the tea house. Maybe it's maybe 3 meter, 4 meter away, completely change. And the key is how many little soft surprise we can create. And one of the devices to do that is this stepping stone, how to arrange and which direction and where is the landing spot and where people see when they land. And if you visit Japanese garden and if you see stepping stone, and if you find some bigger landing spot, look at the direction, probably something different thing, you can see. Okay. And I see, you have to watch down again, and then you come this corner and see the front. Yeah. Yes. So this is one of the yeah. So
I like this thing.
Okay, let's go to okay, let's sit facing to that way. Now, the trick of Zen garden. So, in Japan, in Buddhism, in Zen, the meditation method is please sit down and please sit down. Meditation technique is a little bit different from yoga. They do not recommend to close your eye completely, like halfway, and slightly look down, and then meditate. Because if you close eyes, you get sleepy and fall asleep. Okay. And in China, the monk doing meditation in front of a white wall like this. So see, try maybe 30-second eye time. What do you feel? 30-second meditation. Okay, go. Okay, this is 30 seconds. It's quite long, isn't it? If you ask to do this for 30 minutes, this hell, right? Okay, so this is what Japanese monk felt. If you look at garden instead of white wall, what do you think? The better?
Yeah. Yes.
The point is the direction of the eye has to be slightly go down, and which means maybe you're supposed to look the foot of the rocks, but not so far away, but not so close. So the reason how the Japanese monk started to invent this kind of Zen garden is to help you to be alert during the meditation. Please compare this view and this view. What do you think?
I see a lot more items there to look at. This is simpler here.
Yeah, more activity.
And since there's place for people, you've got the people that are moving constantly in the background. So
Yes,
it's not
that is annoying.
Yeah, it's not you're not as free to meditate here. You could probably do this for an hour, because there are all those little trails to look at and think about what that might mean. And each rock has its own. There's just so much information there, but there's no little distractors.
Well, one of the difference between here and here is the abstraction. There are so many information. It's concrete, like a chair, table, and people. With that elements, you cannot feel the rock, something else. Rock is rock. But when you look at this, everything is kind of abstraction. So it's up to you. You can read this rock something else, a mountain, island, whatever. So the point one for Zen garden is not to introduce anybody, like a human, or any concrete elements. My advisor, the design advisor, when I went to Harvard, the landscape professor seriously asked me in the design studio, said, I love Kyoto and I go to Zen garden many, many times, and particularly Ryoanji, and he asked, why Ryoanji do not plant flowers in the garden? he said, he was very serious, saying that in European monastery, they have the meditation garden in the cloister garden. They have herbs and flowers, and it's the same thing. The Ryoanji is a garden for meditation. Why they do not plant tulip and roses? Yeah, I thought, this professor is crazy, but this was very, serious question for him. And the answer is, it's a miniaturization, and if you plant, just imagine, if you plant tulips next to this rock, what happens? You cannot, this rock is just a boulder, right?
Yeah.
Right? So you want to induce some like infinite imagination from there to sit here for a long time. Yeah, the story cannot be fixed in one story. It has to be infinite possibility you have to find in this alignment. Saying that, I think this is very nice composition because you can see distance this is another Japanese garden technique. There are layers of things going on, and you do not see the waterfall of the tourist is kind of, but the more you see the front view is stone mountain, and then back the tree, and then another layer, water and waterfall, and another layer. That kind of see and through, nothing you see perfectly, and kind of partially screened, but this kind of layers of vision is another way to induce you to see the same picture longer time. Let me criticize this. It's nicely arranged stone, but I think the back, this azalea, the pruning is really rough. And because of this roughness, the sense of scale of this rock is really kind of fixed. If this background azalea is perfectly tapered one horizontal line, then the symbolism of this stone get better. So
it could easily be a mountain then, but yeah, it really looks like bushes behind it. Yeah.
This azalea,
Yes.
the outline of this azalea is really, woolvery.
Right.
Yeah.
But does this azalea flower, or is it kept from flowering? Because that would be a whole different.
But still, you can. Oh, the color.
Yeah.
No.
Does it change still?
Destruction, yes, maybe destruction. It maybe depend on the color. Yeah, but like for example, Ryoanji, you see the cherry tree behind, and seasonally you see beautiful cherry bloom. And so the Zen garden within monochromatic design, you from time to time you see the seasonal color, which is okay, which is probably okay. But the thing which bothering me is the outline of this azalea, which is very wobbly, and because of this wobbly line, the size of this rock is kind of fixed. Yeah. And maybe perhaps the behind tree should be pruned a little bit more carefully. Yeah, it maybe too front. If we can see more depth, your eye can be led to farther. It's kind of blocked to this front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it almost seems intentionally, because if you do look behind there, it's just, it's more distracting. You can see trucks and cars, you can see a great big building back there. But you're kind of drawn not to do that because of the way these leaves go on that kind of tree.
Yes.
Yeah, those compound leaves.
Yeah. And now let's go out. Let's go out. You are, supposed to be appreciate. Do you feel difference between inside and outside view?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Probably because of the sound, too. There's so much more sound outside. It's true, there's a lot of sound. So there's more stimulation. But everything looks different as well.
Yeah. Like this scale of garden, you want to show the detail of gravels, like raked pattern, and it's very difficult to see that detail through glass because of the refraction, and it's really dependent on the climate. If you are very cold or hot, you need to be inside. But one of the reasons why Japanese garden in Zen temple is effective is probably it's partially always outside. Yeah, because of the structure of Japanese house, the inside-outside relationship is very intimate. You think you're inside, but actually it's outside. Yeah, you feel air is basically this condition, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and the veranda is kind of low, maybe 30 to 50 centimeter above the ground. Yeah, and although like a Korean house, because they have the heating system under the floor, they have the rise is much higher, like 1 meter to more than 1 meter high, because they have a pipe under, so they cannot look down, and plus because of the heating system, they have window, so their view is like a window view, and they are very high rise floor, and they cannot look down. But Japanese house is different. Basically, this is glass, but in Japan it's all open, and they have like a veranda here, and you sit on here, basically, so you are looking probably this eye level. Yeah. So if you are going to design Zen garden in your backyard, the first thing you should think is the eye level from where you are going to look, and the distance.
Well, when we first came out, I thought that, oh my, these furrows with the Reiko are much deeper than I realized.
Yes.
Because I didn't see that from here at all.
Yes.
It was flat.
And in the end, the point is, this type of garden is kind of unconsciously force you to sit still and sit for a long time, whether, instead of fighting with time, like fight. If you try to do meditation in front of the wall, you really, it's difficult. But I don't know how many. Oh, it's already, we have been spending 30 minutes.
Oh my.
Time is winning.
One other thing I noticed outside is suddenly those bushes are different than they are inside. Inside, they seem to make it all smaller, and you can't imagine anything in rock. Here, you can kind of ignore them. They seem like bush clouds or something, Yeah. So, here, your criticism about them needing to be a straight line, not so much, as it is inside.
But if you were designing like a huge garden, like Anderson garden, the scale is not so big thing. But if you're making garden for meditation, it has to be small enough which your eye capture it at one glance, not too far, not too, wide.
You know the boundaries of it.
Yes. And within the boundary, you have to create some microcosmos. And if you put like two realistic elements like chair or two realistic plants, that destroy whole imagination. Yeah.
The boundary's too interesting.
Yes.
It is a little too interesting.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is it must be a compromise because of how it's on the hillside, and it's going to be hard to walk.
Yes. But they could probably prune, these branches a little bit more, and probably they can prune the edge a little bit tighter. Yeah. Okay, I think this is the time we should go back.
All right, everybody, I'm gonna give us an official start with a tone. So my name's Hiroo, and today on this wellness walk, I'm going to be integrating two different things together in a series of different invitations we'll be walking really slowly. And basically I'm gonna be incorporating mindfulness with forest bathing. And they're called invitations because they're voluntary, they're invitational. What may happen is you like an invitation and you like it so much, you want to keep using it and you don't want to use the other ones that come after it. Or you might be out listening and I might give an invitation that's about something visual and your ears are really drawn to something else. So I just invite you to listen to the land, listen to your body. We're not going to go very fast, and I chose a route that's not particularly, there is like one area that's a little bit steeper, but we'll go slowly, and we'll basically come back to the same spot. We're going to do a loop and then come back in about a half an hour. You're welcome to talk while we're on the walk, but I do invite you to turn your devices off. So if you've got a phone, I'd rather it be off so it doesn't ring in the middle of everything. And then it will also be less distracting for you. And any questions about what we're doing? No? Okay. So what I'm going to invite you to do to start with is I'm just going to invite you to set an intention for yourself. So this isn't a goal. You're not trying to reach an objective. It's purely inviting in a specific quality of experience. It might be that you want to put a worry down and leave it, which you can pick back up on the rest of the walk after the walk's over. It might be some just sort of peace or inviting in some sense of curiosity. But I'm just going to invite you to, while we walk on into this first stone lantern, to just let your attention come back to the walk and set an intention for yourself. And then I'll stop at the stone lantern for another invitation. And each time I'm coming to the end of that first one, or whatever the invitation is, I'll just ring the chime so that you know we're about to transition to a new invitation, okay? So just follow along and set an intention for yourself. These different invitations, when I come together again, I'll try to do kind of what we're doing now. It won't always be a great circle, but it'll be somewhat so that you can all see each other. And if anyone wants to share something that they noticed, it's optional. You don't have to, but you're invited to participate in sharing whatever connection you're experiencing with the land and the more than human world around us. So in this next invitation, I'm going to walk us up just a little ways, and I just invite you to let your ears pull in and notice how many different sounds there are around us. And you can turn your head back and forth, but just try to notice how many different sounds are in this particular place. So I'll ring the chime and then we'll walk to the next phase. That as I moved my head from left to right, there were very different sets of sounds, the mechanical sounds, the stream sounds. Would anyone else like to share anything they noticed about sound? Yeah.
It wasn't sounds that I was picking up on, it was the light.
Oh, great.
And how the light is dancing through all of the plants.
Thank you. Thank you. So in this next invitation, I'm going to invite you to keep with your ears and then add in your eyes. And I'm just going to invite us to kind of filter all around. You can walk across those stones here. You can come to the bridge, but just basically circle around this portion of the koi area. And I'm just going to invite your eyes and ears to notice all of the motion that's in this place. So you're looking and listening to motion. What are all of the different things and beings in motion in this place? So just, we'll actually sit here for about 8 minutes or so, and then I'll pull us together on the other side of the bridge with a chime. Okay, so just spread out and find a spot to sit or stand. So I noticed I was standing next to, I'm guessing they're a type of allium. They're just bulb flowers with tiny little flowers, kept waving. And there's just so much motion. My eyes or ears kept moving from one thing to the next. Did anyone else want to share what they noticed? Thank you.
So even within one large unit,
Thank you for sharing. Okay. So we're going to walk up to this next stone lantern going in this direction. And for this practice, I'm going to invite you, or this invitation, this one is a mindfulness invitation. So you've tuned in a little bit with your ears and your eyes. And so I'm going to invite your attention to come into one of two options. You can try them both on if you want. But I'm going to invite you to notice where you can feel your breath most vibrantly. And as you're walking, see if you find a breathing pace that matches your footstep. So it might be that you breathe in for the count of 4 steps, and then you breathe out for the count of 4 steps. It's going to vary from person to person, but that's option 1. Option 2 is to simply feel the ground meeting your feet. So feel the sensations underneath your feet. Your feet might feel hot, you might feel your socks, you might feel your shoe, but you're just basically really sending attention down to your feet and where the earth is coming up to meet them. So that you can try either one or both of those on, and we're going to walk slowly up to the next stone lantern. Okay? Okay. Excuse me. So I noticed that my breathing changed, and so my number of steps to the number of breaths shifted somewhere in the middle of that hill. And then I can feel my socks bunched up in my shoes. Anyone else want to share what they noticed?
Unevenness of the surface, whether it's a rock or just a little ridge, as the sole of the shoe wrapped around it.
Thank you.
It was difficult coming from being water and floating to now concentrating on my feet and paying attention to my feet and my shoes because I still wanted to float.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
How my feet protected my balance. As my balance started to get off, my feet would correct to hold my body from falling over.
Thank you.
My inflation was literally my ankle.
Thank you for sharing that. So this next one, you have a choice again. I mean, you always have a choice. You can choose not to do any of these and stay with water. So you can choose to continue noticing the walking and imagine what it would be like if you were walking as a tree. So what would it be like if each time you pulled a leg up, this was like a banyan tree where they've got these roots in the marsh and they're just gently moving across distances. And you can walk really slowly for that if you want to, and you can imagine your body, the trunk of your body coming up, and then, your head sort of being the canopy. So that's one. You can just imagine walking like a tree and what that feels like. Or the other option you can choose is that I'm just going to invite you, I think one of you mentioned it earlier, to notice where there is sun or shade in this place. So as we walk and wrap around, just notice the interplay between the light and where the sunlight is hitting, where the shade is hitting, and that back and forth interplay. Okay? And I don't remember what it looks like on the other side, but we're gonna stop at another one of these little intersections. I'll ring the chime.
Like in the
in the really sunny side, walking, because I don't have sunglasses on or a hat, it kind of forced me to look down to save my eyes from the sun. So I was doing more ground play, and then in the shade I was able to look up and enjoy the depth and the shadows and more long distance views.
Thank you for sharing that. Well, so this is our last invitation and this is about integrating your experience to take with you for the day. So we're just going to walk back down to this place where we left for this last piece. So I'm going to invite you to notice anything from your day or this moment right now that is something that it's a moment of pleasure that you would like to take with you, and then think about any kind of thanks you would like to give to this place in return. And you are welcome to share those, and you also don't have to. It can be just something that your heart takes with you. But we'll just walk right back to where we came from, left for the walk. Thank you all for participating. It's not just me, all of you are creating the experience along with me.
Yeah, no, but he loved the place, and his understanding of Japanese art was very
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Well, I'll invite you to take another of the 2 longest and slowest inhalations and exhalations you've taken today, and you are moving on with the rest of your conference today. There's a really cool spider up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
That was lovely.
Oh, good. Yeah.
There's a way without stairs right here.
Oh, good.
Oh, okay.